Hey everyone, I'm Kristy Bushaw, and I sell the beautiful Alabama and Florida Gulf Coast. And today on Wisdom Wednesday, I want to flip the script because I always talk about the buying and selling along the Alabama and Florida Gulf Coast. But today, I want to have a real candid conversation with the sellers. If you have ever even thought about selling your house or your condo along the Gulf Coast, in Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, Perdido Key, even Gulf Breeze, Florida, then this is the video for you, because I'm going to share mistakes I have seen sellers commit over and over again. And avoiding these will save you time and money. The first one, and it's the biggest one, you know, a lot of people have a challenge with pricing your property correct off the beginning because you don't want to go off of other people's listings. And it happens all the time, constantly. A seller will see a property down the street and maybe their neighbor and base their list price off of that. And even worse, they might see something online, some online software, and go off of that. Pricing your property wrong can cost you thousands. Here along the Gulf Coast, the market is hyper local. On the coast, value is set very different depending upon your building, the amenities, the location, even completely different between you two units. A Gulf front condominium and a Gulf side condominium, they may look the same, even though they're in the same complex, but they have different views, which changes their value drastically. You know, a renovated property, it can be marketed and advertised for a much higher price than one that has not been renovated. One that has more rental income can also change the pricing than one that does not have rental income on the books. So it can absolutely help make you leave money on the table every time. So the biggest key is pricing it right with a real live analysis of the marketplace and not going off of what your neighbor is listed for or what some online algorithm shares with you. Because one thing ChatGPT and all those other AIs don't know is the actual view of the property. So pricing off your neighbor's numbers or a generic online guess can really cost you a lot of money and leave some on the table. Nobody wants that. The second mistake is listing at the wrong time of the year without a strategy. And this happens quite frequently. You know, seasonality cuts both ways for sellers. There are times of the year where buyers are everywhere, and others where people just aren't thinking about their dreams of owning along the beautiful coast. And it's not always when people assume it is. The point is that timing should be a strategy, not an accident. So before you list, we talk about what's happening in the market right now and what is the right strategy for you. And the third mistake, and a big one also, it could surprise sellers at the end, and that is not understanding their finances completely and the financial shape of the building. Here's what I mean by this. When your buyer goes to get financing, they go through two processes. They get financed and the building gets financed. So they have to have certain lender guidelines met to get certain types of loans. The reserves, the budget, the insurance, any special assessments, and any litigation that might be going on in the building. And in 2026, those lending rules, they've changed drastically. So if your building has thin reserves or a problem on the books, your buyer's loan can fall apart at the worst time, right before closing. And that's what I've seen time and time again. So sellers could have a great buyer and everything work out, but the building not qualify for what meets their financial goals. So part of what I do before even listing your property is I help you understand what your building financial setup is. So we don't go in there blindly and mislead a buyer and have an issue midterm of a sale. That's the difference between listing blind and listing prepared. And fourth mistake that I see most buyers make is understanding presentation. You know, this is a big deal because you can't repeat the first viewing a buyer gets. When a buyer walks through your property, it's a feeling. Dark photos, a cluttered room, tired furniture, the listing pictures not being perfect. It's all about the quality of your presentation that costs you money. The listings that sell fast and for top dollar are the ones that have been presented beautifully. Great photography, the right staging touches, the unit just looking at its absolute best, and the presentation is one of the easiest things to get right and one of the most expensive to get wrong. The fifth things I see most often that sellers don't get is not understanding the proceeds. A lot of sellers focus only on the dollar, but what actually matters is what you walk away with, not the original agreed upon price. You know, you have to consider your payoffs, your prorated taxes, your association dues, your insurance, closing costs. And here are one of those things along the coast that is an extra layer, and it's the rental bookings. You know, on some calendars you might be full and you might have to honor those. And then on other calendars, from a seller's perspective, they're giving away thousands of dollars during the summer. Therefore, you as a seller need to take a list and understand exactly what your bottom line is, not just the headliner number. No surprises at the closing table. That is my goal when I work with the seller. And the last one is choosing the wrong agent for this market. This happens a lot where someone has a friend of a friend or a neighbor. And I don't mean to brag, but I am a Gulf Coast specialist. And marketing the Gulf Coast properties, especially a luxury or a rental property or a second home or an investment property, or just moving your family to one of these dynamic areas, they're not all the same as being in a rural destination. I'm a local here along the Florida and Alabama Gulf Coast, and selling an inland home is just different than selling along the beautiful coast. It takes someone who knows the buildings, the buyers, the rental angle, and the out-of-state market, and how to market a property way beyond just putting a sign in the yard and dropping it on MLS. That's the part I genuinely love. And after 20 plus years on this beautiful coast, it's the part I know cold. So here's the bottom line. Selling on the Gulf Coast can be smooth and very profitable when you price it right, time it right, prepare the building, present it beautifully, and know your real numbers. The sellers who struggle are the ones who miss these steps. So if you've been thinking, contemplating selling in the Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Perdido Key, all the way to Gulf Breeze, Florida, let's start with the most important number of all. What's the property actually worth in today's market? Comment home value below and I'll put together a real local market analysis for your special property. No pressure, no obligation, and no harassment. But if you're interested in learning more about something else along the Alabama and Florida Gulf Coast, please don't hesitate to put it below and I'll cover it on the next Wisdom Wednesday. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next Wednesday.